everyone, Jamager here. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 favourite games of the year, 2014. I just wanted to say that 2014 has been a mixed year in terms of games. We've had a lot of really good ones, and quite a few ones which I'd rather not mention. I might do that in another video if I can think of 5, which I've particularly disliked over the year. But before we get started on this list, I want to talk about there's a lot of runners-up in this list that there were a few things about these games that either made them not worthy for the list, or they were pitched to the post at the last minute by another game that came out. There's some certain criteria that they didn't meet. First of all, there's Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Now, this was a really, really solid game. It was probably one of my favourites in the last few years. Third generation is probably actually my favourite generation of Pokemon. Pokemon Emerald was actually my first Pokemon game when I was a kid, so I really, really liked the remake. Personally, I don't think they added any things to make this be a game of the year. It wasn't revolutionary. They took the things that they did in X and Y and they used it to revamp the game. I don't blame them for doing that, because that's what I expected from the game. But then again, they didn't do anything revolutionary this time around to make it game of the year material. Bind of Isaac Rebirth was a very, very solid game. It built upon what the original Binding of Isaac had, and added new mechanics or items, a different art style. A all-round fun game. The Wolf Among Us, technically this started last December. It was an episodic series. Episode 5 did come out this summer though, in May I think, so technically it did come out this year. But overall I'd say I enjoyed that series more than I did The Walking Dead, and that's saying something, because The Walking Dead is one of the best story-driven games I've played in a long time. The Wolf Among Us pitched it to the post, I'd say. I'd also say that one other I'd have to mention is The Long Dark. Now, this is a game that the only reason this would probably be number 1 or number 2 on my list, if it was an early access game. That's the only thing that stopped me from putting it on this. Granted, it is technically it's a game. It's not like people who upload, people like Daisy or games like Daisy and The Forest, where they're just broken messes of games and they've just slapped onto Steam to make some money while the developers actually throw together some ideas. And that's not what early access should be about. It should be about game designers saying, this is a game, how can we make it better? And the community going, well, add this thing to the game, or add this feature. That is what early access should be. Not, there's this bug, there's that bug, oh, we need to fix it, my save data has been corrupted because XYZ. That's not how early access should be, in my opinion. It should be this way of improving the game, adding updates to it. I think Turbo Dismount probably did early access best, because every week they just added new levels, new characters, new models, new everything, and it wasn't just this broken game that was uploaded. In fact, that game didn't even feel like an early access title to me, just because it was in such a good condition when it came out. I was willing to pay £5 for that game, because it was so well produced. But that's enough about me ranting on about early access games. We're going to get down to the top 5. And number 5, we have Mind Path to Thalamus. Now, this game was very, very enjoyable for me personally. It's an indie game. A lot of people won't have heard of it. It's Mind Path to Thalamus. It was really, really, really fun to play. It was this atmospheric, I know people call this genre walking simulator, but it really, really was a fun game. It was very atmospheric at times. There was a lot of really, really clever mechanics, puzzle wise. There was some really, really nice mechanics to do with the weather and things like that, and it was to do with emotional struggles and things like that. It had a deeper meaning. And the game wasn't particularly long. I did cover it on my channel. I did a walkthrough. It was about 6 parts long. Each part was 15 to 20 minutes long. So, it's only a few hours to beat, but it's a really, really good game. And one game that I would definitely recommend that you pick up. It's probably on sale in the Steam Winter Sale right now. If you're watching this before the sales ended, I'd really recommend you pick it up, because it was a really, really fun game. It's one of 2 indie games that I have on this list. I did want to put a few indie games that I really did enjoy, because these are probably games that not many people have heard of, because obviously they're indie, they're small. But that was a really, really enjoyable game I played this year. At number 4 is a joint post. Joint because it's technically 2 games, but it's also the same game. It's Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U and for the 3DS. Now, I must say the Wii U version was probably better in my opinion. It was on a home console. Smash Bros has never been on a portable console before. It felt more at home. It felt like it was designed to be on that platform. The 3DS version wasn't bad, don't get me wrong, but I think the WiiU version had, obviously the better graphics. It ran better. It had better online. It had some of these different features that the 3DS version just couldn't have because of its limitations as a handheld. It's the lack of a decent processor and things like that, and it just couldn't handle things that the Wii U version could, and the Wii U version just runs fantastically. It looks amazing. It's just 1080p, 60 FPS. It just looks like the Wii U. When you compare games that come out on things like the Xbox One, some of these games only run on the Xbox One at 30 FPS at 720p. To think that the Wii U can run games better than a system like the Xbox One is just bonkers. I know you're thinking it's a cartoon game, it's not like a realistic game like Dead Rising 3 or something, but it's just so vivid, and it brought the game out for me personally. I thought it was a really, really good. It built on what Brawl had done, but unfortunately there were a couple of reasons that stopped this from being a lot better than it should have been. The lack of a story. This was something that was added into Brawl. The Subspace Emissary was a really, really fun mode that was added to the game. It was kind of almost like a story behind how the characters all got together to fight alongside each other in the game. It sort of added a depth to the game. There was also a lot of cool bosses from different franchises that you could face. Obviously, things like Rayquaza, who wouldn't have been in the game otherwise. It would have been nice to see a story mode, even if it was like a brief story mode. Just something, just a few hours worth of story would have been nice. Unfortunately, that was taken out. That's one of the reasons it's not higher up. The editor as well in the Wii U version is really good. You can draw textures, you can change the colour. It feels like they've revamped it, but unfortunately they did take out quite a lot of options. You could place different type of blocks and stuff in the Brawl one, which made it really in depth, and unfortunately that has been removed. There's literally very few things you can place: moving platforms, cannons, lava. That is literally it. And other than drawing blocks, you can't really do a lot. Which unfortunately means that you're going to get very bored of the editor quite quickly. But other than that, it was a really fun game. The 3DS version and the Wii U version together are my number 4 slot. At number 3, we have another indie game, the second indie game for the list. It is The Vanishing of Ethan Carter. Now, this was seriously one of the best looking indie games I've ever seen. I said that about Mind Path of Thalamus because that game did look good as well, but this really did beat it. And I was surprised at how good it looked. It looked like a AAA game. It was on PC, and I think it came out on PS4 as well, and it just looked like the most next-gen game we've seen in a long time. In terms of an indie game, it gave AAA titles a run for their money. Even when you compare it to games that are brand new, like the new Assassin's Creed game, and you just look at them side by side, you think, this was an indie game that was developed by a small group of people, and this is a AAA game that was developed by God knows how many people, thousands and thousands of people, just developing this one game over a period of 2 years, and this indie game just looks better. And it's unbelievable how good it looks. Story was good how it was all sort of disjointed, and that sounds negative when I say the word disjointed, but what I meant is it's segmented, and you can play them in any order. It's sort of like they act as flashbacks, and you can play these flashbacks in any order as they're taking place in the past. So the puzzles or the whole mystery-solving element of the game is done in a random order. You can do them in any order, and it still makes sense to you because you sort of piece together what's happening. And the best thing about the game is they don't force you to do any of this. You can just wander around. You can explore the open world, the vast forest, and there's loads of places to explore, like mines and rivers and lakes, and there's all these cool places you can explore. But you don't have to actually do any of the story-based missions. You can just explore, and you could spend 10 hours just wandering around looking for small details. There'll be some note pinned to a tree, or some small detail that you missed on the first way through the game, and that is why that is number 3 on my list. And number 2 is a game which I really didn't expect to enjoy. It's Far Cry 4. Now, Far Cry 3 was a really, really solid game. In my opinion, it had a really good story for an open world game. Open world games don't tend to have good stories, as they just sort of throw you into an open world situation as quickly as possible. But I felt Far Cry 3 had a really, really justifiable story. The idea of being stranded on an island because you've been captured, that felt really real for me. And unfortunately, Far Cry 4 didn't seem to capture that whole realism quite as well as the third one did. But it did build upon a lot of features in the third installment that I really, really did enjoy. It was probably the best looking game I've played all year on my PC. It looked phenomenal. There are so many things you can just turn on, all these extra little details like the dynamic fur on animals and the god rays that just shine down through the trees and just cast these shadows on the world, which just make you feel like you're really in the Himalayas. It feels like you really are there. It's an incredibly immersive game. The only problem I've ever, well, this isn't something that I necessarily have with the game myself. It's something that a lot of people who've played the game have said it is literally a reskin of Far Cry 3. And I can kind of see what they mean. But personally, that didn't bother me because Far Cry 3 had a good system. It worked well. I felt a lot more driven with Far Cry 4, however, to complete it. With Far Cry 3, I ended up getting to a point where I just didn't want to play anymore. And with Far Cry 4, that hasn't really happened yet. So I'm kind of glad that the game seems to be a lot more compelling. It compels me a lot more to want to play it, which is also a very, very good thing. And I think the graphical fidelity was probably my main thing with the game, though. The gameplay itself is really fun. There's a lot of extra things to do post completing the game, side missions. The co-op is extremely fun. Seriously, it's really fun. It is a tad glitchy at times. There's been times where I've been playing co-op. I've gotten into a car and my friend can't see the car that I'm supposedly in, and it looks like I'm hovering around, things like that. I mean, it's really minor things, and I can't really blame Ubisoft for that. I think Far Cry 4 was probably one of the games that actually managed to get okay. I know it does have a few bugs here and there. My brother, actually, who owns the game, had a few issues with it. I think his controller, when he plugged in his Afterglow 360 pad, the game just got black screens. He unplugged that, and he had no issues with it whatsoever, so I guess certain controllers, perhaps the drivers, don't quite meet up the standards with the ones that they expected of players, although I've never ever seen that happen with that controller before, so perhaps it's just that game, who knows. But that Far Cry 4 was a really fun game, and I'd recommend you check it out if you enjoyed Far Cry 3. And number one, now the moment you've all been waiting for. This was a game which I wasn't even thinking of buying. It was a game which I remember hearing about and thinking, that looks really cool, but it's probably not something I'll ever pick up, or if I do pick it up, I'll pick it up a couple of years down the line on the Steam sale or something, It's not one of those games which I think I'll pick up, in the month it comes out. But I ended up picking it up because I saw a website that was selling the key quite cheaply, and I just picked it up. And that game is Alien Isolation. All I can say about this game is it's so fun. It's so horrifyingly fun. You don't expect a survival horror game, to be fun. But the stealth mechanics in the game work really well. The game is really true to the Alien franchise. Everything about it. Just the tracker as well. I love the idea of having this tracker that you can just sneak around and just trying to figure out where the alien is as it stalks you. And the alien is clever. There's one thing that horror games don't do well, and that is just being unable to know what's going to happen next. Some games like Slender, they become repetitive, and when you know what the enemy's going to do, that I'm going to turn around and he's going to be behind me because he's teleported, when you know the mechanics of the villain or the enemy in the horror game, it doesn't become scary anymore. It doesn't become creepy. And there's this whole build-up in Alien Isolation of a 2.5 hour build-up. You don't even see the full alien. You just see glimpses of it, and it's just shown off to you. It's just teased at you for 2.5 hours, and then when you finally see it and you're finally creeping down the corridor away from it, it is so rewarding to just have that first glimpse of it completely. The game itself is really, really long in terms of AAA games. Not a lot of story-based AAA games. I say story-based because obviously games like Far Cry are quite open world. This is an open world game. It's linear. It's linear and it's open world. It's open world in the way that there's lots of places to go and you don't necessarily have to go to where your objective is. You can explore a little bit. But personally, I didn't find myself doing that. I still ended up getting 18 hours out of the 20-odd missions that the game has. There's a ton of things to do. There's lots of difficulties you can redo. There's also the survival mode, which they're planning on doing a season pass. They've added some new maps to it, so you can explore and try and beat your friends' times. It's a really, really fun game overall.